Somewhere in the vaults of Yale University, Espinecki rare book and manuscript library sits a book that has defeated every codebreaker, linguist, and cryptographer who has ever attempted to read it. For 600 years, this strange collection of parchment pages covered in an unknown script and bizarre botanical illustrations has refused to surrender its secrets. World War II codebreakers who cracked Nazi encryption failed against it. Supercomputers running sophisticated algorithms have returned nothing but noise. Artificial intelligence trained on millions of texts has produced only guesses and contradictions. The Voynich Manuscript remains, to this day, the most mysterious document in human history. And here is what makes it truly unsettling. Carbon dating confirms the parchment was made between 1404 and 1438. The ink analysis, much as medieval European production. This is not a modern hoax. Someone, more than half a millennium ago, sat down and carefully wrote 240 pages of something. They drew hundreds of plants that do not exist in any botanical record. They created diagrams of astronomical and biological processes that follow no known science. They did all of this in a script that appears nowhere else on Earth. The question that has haunted scholars for over a century is devastatingly simple. What were they trying to say? To understand why this manuscript exists at all, we need to step back into a world that operated on entirely different assumptions about knowledge, secrecy, and the nature of reality itself. The early 15th century was a period of profound intellectual ferment in Europe. But it was also an age of danger for anyone pursuing certain kinds of knowledge. The manuscript des parchment places its creation somewhere in the decades between the Council of Constance and the fall of Constantinople, a time when the boundaries between legitimate scholarship and heresy could shift without warning. In the courts and monasteries and early universities of this period, knowledge was power in a very literal sense. Alchemists sought the philosopher's stone not merely for gold, but for the secrets of transformation itself. Physicians guarded their remedies jealously, encoding formulas to prevent rivals from stealing their work. Astrologers advised kings on matters of war and succession, and their charts could be evidence of treason if they fell into the wrong hands. Natural philosophers walked a careful line between acceptable inquiry and accusations of consorting with demonic forces. This was a world where hiding what you knew was often the only way to survive knowing it. The manuscript's physical properties tell us something about its creator's circumstances. The vellum is of reasonable but not exceptional quality, made from calfskin prepared in the manner common to Central European workshops of the period. The binding has been replaced multiple times over the centuries, but the pages themselves show signs of being kept together from the beginning. Someone invested considerable resources in this project. Vellum was expensive. Pigments for the illustrations required materials gathered from across known trade routes. This was not the idle doodling of a bored monk. This was a deliberate, sustained effort that would have taken months or years to complete. The illustrations offer our first glimpse into whatever world this document describes. Roughly half the manuscript consists of botanical drawings, plants rendered with roots, stems, leaves, and flowers in vibrant greens and blues and browns. A medieval physician or herbalist would have recognized the format immediately. Such illustrated herbals were common tools of the trade, recording which plants treated which ailments. But here, the familiarity ends. These plants do not exist. Researchers have compared them exhaustively against every known botanical species, every historical herbal, every regional variation of European flora. Some bear superficial resemblance to real plants, a leaf shape here, a root structure there, but none match exactly. Either the author invented them entirely, or they represent something we no longer have any record of, or they are encoded representations of real plants, distorted beyond recognition. The astronomical sections deepen the mystery. Circular diagrams show what appear to be zodiac symbols, surrounded by naked female figures and connected by elaborate channels and tubes. Star charts, perhaps. Astrological calculations, possibly, but the symbols do not correspond to any known astronomical tradition, medieval, European, or otherwise. Some researchers have seen connections to Islamic astronomy, others to earlier pagan traditions, still others to purely imaginary cosmologies. The figures themselves are unusual for their time. Female nudes appear throughout the manuscript, bathing in pools of green liquid, connected to tubes and vessels, arranged in geometric patterns. In an age when such imagery could attract dangerous attention from religious authorities, someone considered these illustrations important enough to include repeatedly. The biological sections, as modern researchers have termed them, are perhaps the strangest of all. Pages show cross-sections of what might be organs or cells or processes of growth and decay, rendered in a style that suggests anatomical knowledge but depicts nothing anatomists recognize. Tube-like structures connect to pools. Small figures swim or float through channels. Some scholars have seen early attempts to depict human reproduction or fetal development. Others see alchemical processes symbolized through bodily metaphors. Still others see nothing but elaborate fantasy. And through all of this runs the script, page after page of careful writing in an alphabet that exists nowhere else. The characters have a fluid, almost calligraphic quality, suggesting a practiced handwriting quickly and confidently. This was not someone laboriously inventing letters as they went. This was someone writing in a script they knew intimately. Statistical analysis reveals that the text follows patterns consistent with natural language. There are word frequencies, character combinations, and structural features that appear in genuine linguistic communication rather than random strings or simple substitution ciphers. But the language itself remains unidentified. The first recorded owner, whose name we know was Georg Barisch, an obscure alchemist living in Prague in the early 17th century. By his own account, Barisch spent years trying to decode the manuscript, convinced it contained profound secrets of natural philosophy. In 1637, he sent copies of some pages to Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit scholar in Rome, famous for his attempts to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphics. Kircher never cracked the code either, but the manuscript passed through his hands and eventually entered the collections of the Jesuit Collegio Romano in Italy, where it sat largely forgotten for 2 centuries. In 1912, a Lithuanian book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased the manuscript from the Jesuits, along with other rare texts. Voynich recognized immediately that he had found something extraordinary. A letter tucked into the binding, written in 1666 by Johannes Marcus Marci, rector of Prague University, claimed the manuscript had once belonged to Emperor Rudolf II of the Holy Roman Empire, who had allegedly paid the enormous sum of 600 ducats for it. The letter also claimed, apparently based on rumor, that the famous English philosopher Roger Bacon might have authored the text. Both claims have proven difficult to verify, but they attach the manuscript to a web of historical intrigue that has only grown more tangled over time. Voynich spent the remaining years of his life trying to solve the manuscript's mystery, or at least to generate enough interest that someone else might solve it. He exhibited the pages, invited scholars to examine them, and promoted various theories about their origin. After his death, his widow eventually sold the collection, and through a series of bequests, the manuscript arrived at Yale in where it has remained ever since. Available for scholarly examination but no closer to being understood. The 20th century brought new tools and new failures. William Friedman, considered one of the greatest cryptanalysts in history, devoted decades to the problem. Friedman had broken Japanese diplomatic codes before World War II and founded the Signals Intelligence Agency that would become the NSA. He approached the Voynich manuscript with the full arsenal of techniques that had cracked enemy communications during the war. He failed. His team ran statistical analyses, searched for repeating patterns that might reveal a cipher structure, tested every known encryption method of the medieval and early modern period. Nothing worked. Friedman eventually concluded, tentatively, that the text might represent an early constructed language, something invented rather than encoded, but even this theory he could not confirm. The manuscript does not behave like known cipher systems. Medieval and Renaissance encryption typically used substitution methods, replacing each letter of a real language with a different symbol. Such ciphers can be broken through frequency analysis because the underlying language still imposes its statistical patterns on the encoded text. But the Voynich text shows frequency patterns that do not match any known language, encoded or otherwise. It has too many unique words to be a simple cipher of Latin or German or Italian. It has too much internal consistency to be gibberish. It occupies a space that cryptography cannot easily explain. Modern computers have not done better. Researchers have run the text through sophisticated pattern recognition algorithms, natural language processing systems, and machine learning models trained on hundreds of historical and modern languages. Various teams have announced breakthroughs that later researchers could not replicate. In 2014, A study claimed the manuscript was written in a form of encoded Hebrew. In 2017, another team suggested medieval Mexican origins. In 2019, a researcher argued for a Proto-Romance language. Each claim generated headlines and then dissolved under scrutiny. The manuscript continues to defeat analysis that has cracked every other historical code. Some have proposed that the manuscript is simply a hoax, an elaborate medieval fake designed to deceive wealthy collectors into paying for meaningless pages. This theory has a certain appeal. It would explain why the text cannot be decoded, because there is nothing to decode. The illustrations would be deliberate nonsense, designed to suggest mysterious knowledge without containing any. The entire production would be an early example of confidence trickery, the sort of scheme that separated rich patrons from their money throughout history. But the hoax theory faces significant problems. Creating 240 pages of consistent fake text would be an enormous undertaking with uncertain reward. The writing shows no signs of hesitation or inconsistency that might indicate someone making things up as they went. The statistical properties of the text, while matching no known language, are remarkably uniform throughout the manuscript. A hoaxer would need to invent not just an alphabet, but a set of rules governing how that alphabet combined, and then apply those rules consistently across thousands of words. This would require either extraordinary discipline or some system for generating pseudotext that seems anachronistically sophisticated for the 15th century. More importantly, the manuscript shows signs of actual use. Pages are worn in patterns, suggesting they were consulted repeatedly. There is evidence of corrections and additions made after the original composition. Whoever owned this document appears to have treated it as a functional text, not a decorative curiosity. If it was a hoax, it fooled its own creator or owners into treating it seriously. The possibility that haunts researchers most is that the manuscript contains genuine knowledge we can no longer access. Somewhere in the gap between the early 15th century and our own time, an entire tradition of thought might have been lost. A medical practice, an alchemical school, a religious sect, a philosophical movement. History is full of lost knowledge, texts that survived only in fragments or disappeared entirely, traditions that ended when their last practitioners died. The Voynich Manuscript might be a window into a world that otherwise vanished without trace. Consider what would be required for such a loss. A community of some kind, educated enough to develop or maintain a complex writing system and extensive enough to produce someone capable of creating this manuscript. A body of knowledge considered important enough to record at length, but dangerous enough to encode. Some catastrophe. Weather, persecution, plague, war, or simple dispersal. That eliminated everyone who might have passed the tradition forward, and then centuries of silence. The manuscript circulating among owners who recognized its strangeness but could not penetrate its meaning. The early 15th century offered many such possibilities. The Hussites in Bohemia developed radical religious and social ideas that brought crusades down upon them. Various mystical and millenarian movements swept through Europe and vanished. Alchemical traditions flourished in courts and universities before being driven underground by changing attitudes toward magic and science. Any of these contexts might have produced secret knowledge recorded in secret script. Or the manuscript might represent something more individual. A single mind working in isolation, developing a private system of thought and a private language to express it. History has examples of such personal invention. Constructed languages and symbolic systems created by individuals for their own use. The manuscript might be a kind of intellectual diary. A record of one person's attempt to understand the world that was never meant to be decoded by anyone else. When they did, their system died with them. The illustrations argue against this solitary theory, though. The botanical drawings, whatever their relation to real plants, follow conventions of herbal illustration that suggest medical or pharmaceutical purpose. The astronomical diagrams, however peculiar, indicate engagement with traditions of celestial observation and prediction. The biological sections, if that is what they are, point toward theories of the body and its processes. This feels like applied knowledge, not abstract speculation. Today, the manuscript continues to attract new investigators. Computer scientists test new algorithms. Linguists propose new language candidates. Historians search archives for evidence of its earliest provenance. Amateur sleuths publish theories online, some insightful, many fanciful, all failing against the text's stubborn silence. Yale has digitized the entire manuscript, making it available to anyone with internet access. More eyes have examined these pages in the past 2 decades than in all the centuries before. The code remains unbroken. What makes the Voynich Manuscript so enduring as a mystery is not simply that we cannot read it, but what that failure reveals about the limits of human knowledge. We have sent robots to Mars. We have decoded the human genome. We have built machines that can beat champions at chess and generate images from text descriptions. And yet we cannot read a book written 600 years ago by someone using nothing but ink and parchment. The manuscript humbles our confidence in our own intellectual power. There is something almost aggressive about its resistance. It seems designed to be almost readable, to offer patterns that suggest meaning just beyond grasp. The plants are almost identifiable. The script is almost familiar. The structure is almost logical. Every near miss heightens the frustration. Cryptographers speak of the Voynich curse, the way the manuscript seems to invite interpretation only to withdraw at the last moment. Researchers have devoted years, careers, significant portions of their lives to these pages, and the pages have given nothing back. Perhaps this is the manuscript's real message, if it has one. That some knowledge is destined to remain hidden, that some communications fail across the gulf of time, that we are not entitled to understand everything simply because we want to. The 15th century is close enough that we feel we should be able to reach it, far enough that crucial context has been lost. Whoever wrote these pages had something to say. They said it carefully, ostensibly, with evident effort and purpose. And we will never know what it was. The manuscript sits in its climate-controlled vault in New Haven, Connecticut. Scholars may request to examine it, turning its vellum pages with gloved hands, studying characters that have outlasted empires. Somewhere in those carefully drawn loops and lines, those impossible flowers and naked figures and mysterious diagrams, lies an answer to a question we cannot quite articulate. 6 centuries of silence, the most sophisticated analytical tools humanity has ever developed, and still the Voynich Manuscript keeps its secrets, as it has since the day someone first dipped a quill in ink and began to write words that no one else would ever understand. The question of who created this impossible document has spawned theories ranging from plausible to absurd. For decades, the name most frequently attached to the manuscript was Roger Bacon, the 13th century English Franciscan friar known for his writings on optics, alchemy, and natural philosophy. This attribution came from the 1666 letter found with the manuscript, which mentioned Bacon as a possible author based on rumors circulating in Prague. The theory had romantic appeal. Bacon was known to have advocated for experimental science centuries before such approaches became acceptable. He had written about secret codes and the dangers of revealing certain knowledge to the uninitiated. He seemed like exactly the kind of figure who might produce an encrypted masterpiece. But the carbon dating destroyed this theory completely. The parchment was made between 1404 and 1438, more than a century after Bacon's death in 1292. Unless someone used very old blank parchment, which would be extraordinary and wasteful, Bacon could not have written these pages. The attribution was likely a 17th century invention, designed to increase the manuscript's value and mystique by connecting it to a famous name. Whoever actually wrote the Voynich Manuscript remains anonymous. Some researchers have proposed Emperor Rudolf II himself as a key figure in the story, not as author but as the reason the manuscript took the form it did. Rudolf ruled the Holy Roman Empire from 1576 to 1612 and established his court at Prague Castle, transforming the city into a center of art, science, and occult investigation. His collections included paintings, scientific instruments, exotic animals, and thousands of manuscripts dealing with alchemy, astrology, and natural magic. Rudolf paid handsomely for items that promised hidden knowledge, if the manuscript was indeed sold to him for 600 dut. As the old letter claims, this would explain why someone might create such an elaborate encoded text. There was a market for mysterious documents, and Rudolf was the most eager buyer in Europe. The Prague connection has led some investigators to focus on the court scholars who surrounded Rudolf. John Dee, the English mathematician and occultist, visited Prague in the 1580s, along with his associate Edward Kelly, who claimed to communicate with angels through a crystal ball. Kelly had a reputation as a confidence man, and some have suggested he might have created or modified the manuscript to sell to Rudolf. But the dates do not work. The manuscript predates Dee and Kelly by more than a century. They might have owned it or traded it, but they did not create it. For centuries, one book has baffled the brightest minds on Earth. It's a text so strange, so enigmatic, that it defies every attempt at translation. This is the story of the Voynich Manuscript, the world's most mysterious book. Imagine a book filled with elegant, looping script that looks like a real language, that isn't. The pages are adorned with intricate illustrations of fantastical plants that don't exist in our world, strange astrological charts with unknown constellations, and puzzling diagrams of what appear to be biological processes, complete with tiny human figures bathing in green fluids. This isn't a prop from a fantasy movie. It's a real 240-page codex, currently housed at Yale University's Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library. The mystery begins with its known history in the early 17th century. A man named Georg Berisch, an alchemist in Prague, owned the manuscript. He was utterly stumped. He spent years trying to decipher its contents, convinced it held valuable knowledge, perhaps secrets of alchemy or medicine. Frustrated, he sent a sample page to a renowned scholar in Rome, Athanasius Kircher, hoping he could crack the code. Berisch wrote that the book was taking up space uselessly in his library, a puzzle he just couldn't solve. But even Kircher, a master of languages and codes, was left speechless. The manuscript passed through several hands, including those of Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, before vanishing for over 200 years. It resurfaced in 1912 when a Polish book dealer, Wilfried Voynich, discovered it in a Jesuit college near Rome. And since then, the mystery has only deepened. So, what could it be? The theories are as wild as the illustrations themselves. One popular idea is that it's a hoax. Could it be an elaborate gibberish text created by a clever forger to swindle a wealthy patron like Emperor Rudolf II, who was known for his fascination with the occult and strange artifacts? This seems plausible, but there's a problem. The text follows specific linguistic rules. Statistical analysis shows that the words have consistent lengths, and certain characters appear more frequently than others. Just like in any real language, the text also obeys something called Zipf's law, which describes the frequency of words in natural languages. Creating a hoax of this complexity, with such subtle linguistic patterns, would have been an incredible feat in the 15th or 16th century, long before modern linguistics was even a field of study. Another theory dives into the mystical. Could the manuscript be the result of automatic writing, or glossolalia, which is speaking in tongues? Imagine a mystic or a prophet in a deep trance, channeling information from another realm. Their hand moves across the page, writing a language not of this world, documenting divine or otherworldly knowledge. Some of the strange biological drawings, with their interconnected tubes and vessels, have been interpreted as spiritual or alchemical processes, representing the soul's journey or the creation of the philosopher's stone. The drawings of women bathing in green liquid could symbolize purification or rebirth. This theory fits the esoteric nature of the manuscript, but it doesn't get us any closer to a real translation. It turns the book into a spiritual artifact rather than a practical text. Let's get back to the code. If it is a cipher, it's one of the most brilliant ever devised. During World War II, top codebreakers from both the US and UK, including the legendary William Friedman who helped crack Japan's purple cipher, turned their attention to the Voynich Manuscript. They applied every cryptographic technique they knew, but all of them failed. They found patterns, yes, but no underlying plaintext. The structure was too complex for simple substitution ciphers and too repetitive for more advanced ones. It was as if the manuscript was designed to look like a code but resist all attempts at decryption. This led to another fascinating possibility. What if it is a lost natural language written in an unknown script? History is full of languages that have disappeared, leaving behind only tantalizing fragments. Perhaps a small, isolated community developed this unique writing system to record their knowledge of botany, astronomy, and medicine. The strange plants could be real species from a specific, undiscovered region, or perhaps they're drawn with artistic license, exaggerating certain features for medicinal purposes. Some researchers have pointed to potential links with obscure Asian or Central American languages, but no definitive connection has ever been made. It's a romantic idea, a window into a lost culture, but without a Rosetta Stone, a key to unlock the script. It remains pure speculation. In the 21st century, we've thrown our most powerful tool at the problem: Artificial intelligence. Researchers have used sophisticated neural networks and machine learning algorithms to analyze the manuscript's text. In 2018, one AI study made headlines by claiming the manuscript was written in a form of coded Hebrew. The AI suggested that the letters of each word had been shuffled, and the vowels had been dropped, a common practice in ancient Hebrew texts. It even offered a tentative translation for the first sentence, something like she made recommendations to the priest, men of the house, and me and people. While exciting, this finding has been heavily debated and is far from universally accepted. Many experts remain skeptical, pointing out that AI can find patterns in anything, even random noise. The machine might be just reflecting the patterns it was trained on, rather than uncovering a true hidden language. Let's take a step back and consider the sheer scale of the manuscript. At 240 pages, it's a massive undertaking. Radiocarbon dating of the vellum places its creation in the early 15th century, between 1404 and 1438. The ink and paints are consistent with that period. Someone, or a group of people, invested an enormous amount of time, effort, and expensive materials to create this book. The script is written with a fluid, confident hand, suggesting the author was fluent in this writing system, not painstakingly inventing it as they went. Why would anyone go to such lengths to create an indecipherable hoax? It seems more likely that the book had a real purpose, a purpose that has been tragically lost to time. This brings us to a more sobering thought. What if the key to the Voynich Manuscript once existed but is now gone forever? History is a story of loss. Think of the great library of Alexandria, a repository of ancient knowledge, burning to the ground. Countless manuscripts, scrolls, and books have been destroyed by fires, floods, and wars. It's entirely possible that the one document that could have explained the Voynich scripted dictionary, a grammar guide, or even a simple letter was lost in some historical catastrophe. The manuscript might be the last surviving relic of a forgotten world of knowledge, its secrets locked away forever by an accident of history. So, where does that leave us? The Voynich Manuscript sits silently in its climate-controlled vault at Yale, an enduring symbol of the unknown. It's a mirror reflecting our own desire for answers, our fascination with puzzles, and our frustration with the limits of our knowledge. Every theory, from an alchemist's secret diary to an alien encyclopedia, tells us more about ourselves than it does about the book. It has been called a Rorschach test for the human mind. Perhaps the true value of the Voynich Manuscript isn't in the information it might contain, but in the questions it forces us to ask. It challenges our assumptions about language, knowledge, and history. It reminds us that, for all our scientific and technological advancements, the universe is still full of mysteries, and maybe, just maybe, some secrets are meant to remain unsolved, continuing to inspire wonder and curiosity for generations to come. What do you think? Is it a clever hoax, a lost language, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.